Good afternoon, and welcome to Preparing for Life Beyond the CIO Role, a complimentary webinar from healthsystemcio.com. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra. I'm the editor-in-chief of healthsystemcio.com, and I'll be your moderator today. We encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can go ahead and type them in as they occur to you in the lower right-hand corner of your screen in the Q&A box. Leave the default set to all panelists, and go ahead and send those in. We'll be posing them later in the program. You can download the deck. The URL's in front of you. It's at the bottom of all slides, a shortened version, and I'll send it out in the chat box, so plenty of chances to get the deck. And we are recording today's event, so we will have an archive available. Definitely within 2 business days, usually sooner. You'll get an email when it's ready, and a separate registration is required. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, we're going to go 40 to 45 minutes. First, we're going to hear from Steve Huffman, President, Memorial Hospital and Beacon Health System, and then we're going to have our Q&A. So, without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to our good friend Steve Huffman. Steve, thanks for joining us today for this great topic. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks a lot, Anthony. It's fun to do these, and it's kind of fun to do this one from another chair. So let me journey into how I moved from CIO to interim president, because that's important for the rest of the deck. So I've been with Memorial Hospital. It's a 525-bed hospital in South Bend, Indiana, for about 17 years. 4 years ago, we formed a new health system called Beacon Health System, and it's got 2 hospitals and a large medical group, about 280 physicians in it. And served about 5-6 years as a CIO, and late last May, I was asked to step into an interim president role of Memorial Hospital. And how that came about is the current president, then current president of Memorial Hospital, filled a spot in our Beacon Medical Group, our physician group that was open because we needed a spot filled. And so we had this internal switch as an interim, and it's been interim for, it'll be probably a year or a year plus. And so that's how the journey sort of took care of itself. It was very quick. It was all of 2 weeks and 2 conversations. And so what I want to highlight today as we go through here in the next 20 minutes is the top 10 things I think I did right to be positioned to be asked. This wasn't anything that I was lobbying for, but there probably, as I look back on it, some things that I did right. And then some things looking back that, wow, I wish I would have done more of or stopped. And then I want to give you a view looking at IT now from the president's desk, what I see, and then a few considerations on moving up. So we'll jump right into top 10 things I thought I did right, and things for you to consider if you want to move beyond the CIO role. The first, and many of us have done this, is advanced education outside of technology. So I received an MBA from the University of Notre Dame, and I think as you look at, and what Chime's been telling this, most of our industry groups have been sharing this, that you've got to be tied into the business. And it really, what you learn outside of technology, what you learn in business is absolutely key to the CIO role. And it's, as you look at that advanced education, whether it's physician, whether it's business, it's so critical not to be pigeonholed as the tech guy. And so that was important. The second is a strong relationship with key executive members. Throughout my career at Memorial and Beacon, one of the things that I continually try to do is connect with, both formally and informally, with the other key executive members. Use them as mentors, use them as just stop-in appointments. Hey, how are things going? Anything I can help you with? Know their kids' names, know what's going on in their lives. Just continuing to foster an authentic relationship with other key executive members. I think I did that right. The other, and this almost goes without saying, is a strong relationship with key physicians. When this came about in last May, this transition to the president role could have been derailed by physicians. Physicians in inpatient settings and in outpatient settings have incredible amounts of influence, and can very quickly rise up and stop good momentum, including your career momentum. And so the importance of working with and developing strong relationships with key physicians is critical. The next is don't be the go-to guy for tech issues in the moment. This is a big one that I see, and I try to even coach the IT team on. When you're in meetings with other key executive members or physicians, it's incredible the amount of times people struggle with laptops or iPads or iPhones. And I always found it instructive to be helpful to a point, but let them realize that I'm not the go-to person. I'm not the tech guy. Although as the CIO, I was frequently pointed to as, well, maybe Steve, no, I can't do that. I have a team. Let's talk about a business topic. And so that's a critical one that I think I did right. The next is look at opportunities in technology from a business perspective. I think many CIOs do this really well, but this is talking from a business perspective is the foundation. What are we trying to achieve? It's not about the EHR. It's not about meaningful use. It's not about meaningful use payments. What are the objectives of the corporation, and speak from that is the foundation. And those opportunities to not focus on technology but focus on the business will highlight you when opportunities arise. If you're a key member of the executive team, if you've made it to the CIO role, you're a key member of the executive team, then act like it. And what I mean here is you're involved in a wide array, arguably everything that goes on at a corporate level, you get some insight to. You should leverage that. When topics come up that don't necessarily relate to IT, you're a key executive member, speak up on that. Your opinion matters, and many times, and actually the gentleman that serves as the interim CIO now, that was my number 2, that was one of the early coachings. You can't sit at the executive table and be quiet. You need to chime in, even if it's not technology. One of the things that I was absolutely adamant on and still am, is as the CIO, you should arguably be the best presenter and listener at the executive team. You should have more pictures than words on slides. You should be able to eloquently discuss in front of large crowds, in front of board members, in front of the other executive team. You should be pointed to as the key presentation person at the executive table. And I think that's helped. I'm not perfect in that area, but I know that's helped for me. Express your desire to be included in succession planning. Frequently, these discussions are difficult, challenging. People don't necessarily want to have them because their plans might not align with your plans. But I regularly would ask, hey, how is succession planning working? Where do I fit? Where could I fit? It wasn't a monthly topic. It could be an annual topic. But get someone to tell you in the organization what trajectory you're on, and most importantly, where your shortfalls are. It goes back to my strong relationship with key executive members. I surrounded myself with people who were influential and would tell me where my shortfalls were so I could work on those. That's really important. And get in front of the board every opportunity that you can. Audit committee, finance committee, main board, whether it's education topics, capital, another business that you're assisting with, just get out and present. And then one key, the 10th topic here is, even if it isn't your business, make it your business. What I tried to do is, and what I've been coached on is, if you're sitting in an IT chair, CIO chair, even in my new chair, in the president's chair of the hospital, if something's going on in the organization that doesn't relate to you, but you're interested in it, make it your business. Because 9 times out of 10, people are going to include you in that and not block you from it, and you've just built more relationship. So even if it's not your business, make it your business. So those are the top 10 things I think I did right. Looking back, things that would have helped more, I have an incredible new appreciation and passion for rounding. I didn't get, even though I said I rounded, I didn't understand what rounding meant until I sat in the president's chair. And looking back, I think the importance of getting out, connecting with people on the units, in the offices, to just find out how it's going and to create those relationships is incredibly important. I could have done it 10,000 times more throughout the entire organization than I ever did as the CIO. As ridiculous as it sounds, and I struggle with this as an introvert, not an extrovert, is lunch is key. I would prefer to block out 30, 45 minutes if I could and work out of my office and just get things done. The reality is that's not how it works. And so lunch is key with community members and leaders, execs, docs, and I try not to eat with the same group regularly and try to rotate through, and greater than 50% of my lunch is outside of with leaders and physicians and community members. It's just incredibly important. It might be obvious to other folks. You know, when looking at it, it's obvious to me. It's not something that comes naturally to me, but I could have done much better. Drop-ins with other leaderships. I can't say enough about relationships. The drop-in concept, and it might not be true in every part of the country, but in the Midwest, it's all about, hey, how are you doing? Poking your head in, anything I can do for you. Super important. Know your other executive team members, what they like, what they dislike, so when you screw up, you can go buy them a box of chocolates. It's just that relationship is very important. Get engaged with more outside of IT within the organization. I've beat this drum time and time again already, but it's important not to be the go-to IT person and to make things your business. I didn't do that enough as the CIO. And as the CIO, I didn't know enough physicians. I would recommend knowing as many physicians as you can in work, outside of work, at lunch, go to their office, visit, talk beyond technology, because physicians have incredible amounts of influence. And intimately know your customers' 1- and 3-year goals. So as the CIO, can you stand up and say, I absolutely know what my hospital's 3-year goals are going to be and how I plug into that? One of the things that I forced as the president to our current CIO is for every hospital goal, and there's only 10 of them, 10 objectives this year with one goal in 3 years, we're going to be X. For each objective this year, they have a ticket number. Sounds ridiculous, but I can point to my wall on my left. I see my 1-year objective as an example, my CLABC rate for intensive care unit, and I have a ticket number, and I know what IT is plugged into that. So as an IT lead, do you have perfect insight to your entity's goals, and how do you tie into that? And then grow your business acumen. That's something that I thought I had good business acumen until I sat in this chair and realized, man, there's some things that I really need to focus on as it relates to overall system performance, overall financial contribution margin of specific entities, unit performance. It's just something that's important. So looking at IT now from the president's chair, I've taken almost a complete hands-off, limited meddling, and I did that very quickly. I did that within a week. I stepped away and named my number 2 person in there. I think it's been very beneficial for both of us because I'm a tinkerer, and I've tried not to tinker in IT. One of the things I used to say as a CIO is, if someone came to me and said, hey, we need to cut your budget, we need to, you need to reduce, what I would say is, hey, I don't use it. I support all this stuff for you guys to use. If you want to stop using products to reduce cost, I'm all for it. If you want me to reduce staff, here's the intended and unintended consequences. You guys use it, I don't, I just support it. Well, now I have to use it. And so there are some things that are frustrating. One of them is it seems like it takes 3,000 times longer than it should to get anything done. And that's even with the insider knowledge of being a CIO. What seems like it should be perfectly aligned, happen very quickly, takes forever. And that's just looking back now, it just seems way too long. The next is forcing alignment to key hospital goals, and I've touched on this before, a ticket number for each goal. Because really our IT shop, even though I was the CIO, we did not have perfect alignment to the entity goals. We sort of knew what they were, we were marching towards them, but we were very reactionary. And so now I'm trying to have the supporting groups, not just IT, but the supporting groups help lead us to better achievement of entity goals. A couple of things to consider as you're looking at as the CIO and thinking that you might want to go further. When I thought about this, because the president position was not something that I had on my radar and was lobbying for, what I could have done better is think back, what's my trajectory for my next move? Is it a COO? Is it the president? Is it a system CIO? What is it? And so I would challenge the group, challenge anybody, as you're the CIO and you're talking to recruiters and you're talking, what's your next step? Because I do think now, as CIOs have become much more mature at the executive table, the opportunity to get into another position like a president is possible. And so more thoughtful consideration around that is key. Asking the question whether you're part of a succession plan now, and if you're not, why is that? And really asking people around you for that critical feedback. Where are my shortfalls? Why am I not part of the succession plan for the president? How could I be? What skills am I lacking? Those are all valid questions. And know your leadership gaps. I took 2 360 assessments, 360-degree assessments, so I got regular feedback over the last 5 years and partnered with the other executive teams. And I have a full open door policy, which includes come in and tell me what I'm doing wrong. The other item that I would do to my key reports when I gave them their performance evaluation is they got an unfiltered time that they could give me feedback that wouldn't impinge on their performance evaluation at all. So we would sit down, we would annually talk about their performance, but I would say, now is your time to tell me whether I'm a jerk. And I won't hold it against you. It's about improving together. And I got great feedback during that time, and that's important to understand where your leadership gaps are. A couple of other keys, mentors, choose them wisely. I've had bad mentors and I've had good mentors. And I think the key is, are you really getting anything out of a relationship that you call a mentoring relationship? If you're not, don't call it a mentoring relationship. And validate the information that you're receiving from mentors. Does it sound right? Bounce it off somebody else. I've fired, I don't know if you can call it fired, I've fired mentors before because I wasn't getting feedback. It felt like we were co-mentoring one another. That doesn't work. I need feedback, I need improvement. So choose them wisely. Read incessantly, sort of goes without saying as a CIO, but I would expand and recommend that you read the ACHE publications, Wall Street Journal. Just read incessantly. Know what your CEO is reading. Know what information your CFO is receiving, and just learn about the business. Read outside of healthcare. Read incessantly. That's something that if you want to grow that you've got to do. Grow your number 2 person. So I wouldn't have been able to move into the president position if I didn't have a number 2 person that stepped into the old CIO role. Highly important. Your ability to move on and up within your own organization sometimes rests on, do you have a number 2 that could replace you? And I'm always good with people who want to replace me and people who want to go farther than I am. Great, love it. Let's get you there because it provides me opportunity. So grow your number 2 person. This is an interesting one. I've run into this a lot. I don't know if we have any recruiter attendees. Recruiters are great, but are challenged by movement. So when I took the interim position for the president, it put me on a different potential glide path for recruiters. I call it, it's the that's interesting phenomenon. So now when I talk to a recruiter, I've been out of IT. I'll probably be out of IT for a year. And so the question is, okay, do you want to go bigger? Do you want to go on the president track? Do you want to go COO? When you make movement, it creates a that's interesting phenomenon with recruiters that you just have to manage. And I found that an interesting thing to consider as I've talked to multiple recruiters through this journey. And then the last is your family and support system ready for a change? Being a CIO for 5 years, that's not an incredible amount of time, but after 5 years, you sort of get into the pace, and your support system and my family sort of understood that pace. It's a dramatic change moving from a CIO role to a president role, and there's many more commitments in the evenings and early mornings, and it's really important to ensure that your family and your support system's ready for that change. In 2 weeks, when the conversation started in May of last year, I didn't have a lot of time to sit down and say, okay, this is what it's going to mean, because frankly, I didn't know what it was going to mean from a time commitment. And so you really need to prep your family. I'm thinking about doing this. Here's what it's going to mean. Are we all on board with that? And that's important, because without a good support system, you're not going to be successful. So with that, it's a lot of information journey, but I was hoping for robust questions and throw out what I can from that information. So.
Excellent. Well, Steve, great presentation, and as Steve mentioned, we've got plenty of time for Q&A, so go ahead and type your questions in and leave the default set to all panelists, and we will pose them to Steve, and I'm happy to not mention anyone's name if you don't want it out there that you got your eyes on other things. So we'll pose all these anonymously, at least verbally. Okay, question. You mentioned that you don't want to, in the moment, you don't want to be seen as the tech guy. And we've all seen that, where anytime you're in a room and there's an issue with a projector or any kind of computer issue of a group meeting, they're going to look at you. And you mentioned a way to handle it, but I'm wondering, how do you actually do that without being rude?
Yeah, I think if you've done it in the past, breaking the habit is much more difficult than just, I try to continually do this. When they look to you, if it's ridiculously easy, jump in, help out. But if it's something that you're going to have to go up and you're going to have to tinker with it, I literally either sit there and say, you know what, I've got a team. And just be honest, I'm not an expert in that. Let's get a hold of somebody to deal with it. Because as soon as you start doing it, you're going to do it forever. They're always going to point to you, and then you're the tech person, and that sucks.
You definitely don't want to be like on your hands and knees with like cords, right?
Oh, it's the classic in the meeting. Someone can't get dialed into WebEx, or someone can't get their laptop that they brought in from the outside. And you're absolutely right. They always look at the CIO, and it's just, I got to the point where I didn't look at the situation. I would just write notes in front of me. And so someone would literally have to tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, can you help? And, oh, yeah, probably not.
What about, I mean, and I mean to get in the weeds here, but what about, you mentioned saying, let me get someone up here. And that seems to me a very reasonable kind of approach. It's not that I'm ignoring you, but hey, I'm not an expert on this stuff. Let me call someone and get someone up here. Yeah, because or is that still a bridge too far?
No. I'll call and get somebody up because it's my team. Sure, no problem.
Right. Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good way to handle it. Let's talk a little bit about the recruiter phenomenon. You mentioned that it becomes a challenge for that movement. I can understand that. Anything that sort of, they've got you in a box, or they had you in a box, and they have jobs that are also in that box, so everything's kind of easy. You're CIO, and here are some CIO jobs, and now you've moved, and it just makes it a little more complicated for them. So how can you work through that? I mean, I guess first you have to know what you want to do and communicate that to them, and then also give them the confidence to believe that you know what you want and that you're not kind of in the middle. And because the last thing they want is to put you up for something and then it doesn't, you change your mind.
Well, right. You're absolutely right. And the reality is, I understand we probably have a recruiting firm on the attendee list, but I understand that I'm a package that they're trying to sell, and it makes it difficult for them because they've got to continually explain, hey, why is this guy, I'll just speak in my terms transparently. If I want to go back and be the CIO somewhere, they're going to have to explain to my future employer why I'm not going to be a flight risk to be a president someplace else. So that's that's interesting challenge. And the way I have tried to combat this is I'm just going to be transparent. Here's the way it is. Here's what I want, and here's where I'm trying to get. But it does create challenges all around.
Right. How would you know, for people on the line, it's, it sounds silly, but it's okay to be happy being the CIO. And how can you make people comfortable with that? Or how can they know, hey, if this is how you feel about your work, you're perfect as a CIO, and that's okay, and you should stay there. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, probably two or three thoughts. First of all, if your ego is tied into your title, you're going to have problems no matter what your title is. So you got to sort of separate and what I try to communicate even in this role is Steve Huffman is bigger than just my title. Like if it went away tomorrow, I'd be okay with it because my job doesn't define me. If you get into a position where your job defines you, you will never find the job to make you happy, in my opinion. So the other thing I would say about the CIO role that I frankly miss as president, I mean, I'm having a blast, love being the president, but what I miss from the CIO role is the entire view of the corporation, multiple hospitals, all the physician offices, home care, the community. I miss that. I have one entity. It's a big entity that I'm responsible for, but the CIO role is a uniquely positioned role that I think anybody should be happy with if they attain that, and has incredible amounts of influence. So that's how I would answer that.
Okay. Just want to mention to folks on the line that I do realize if you message in a question, your name will pop up. If anybody wants to email me a question, we can keep your name private, and I can get it in front of Steve anonymously. So we have another about 12 minutes or so. So go ahead and email me if you want to do it that way. I just think some folks may be concerned that they don't want to get it out there. It's possible. Let's talk a little bit about. And I've always, following CIOs for years and years and years in different industries, I've always found it's such a difficult tightrope to walk between being in charge of the technology department and not wanting to be associated with technology or the technology guy. So someone's got to be the technology guy, right? Someone's got to know the technology. If you want to distance yourself from it, how do you still have a functional department? Who has to be the technology guy and has to be okay being the technology guy?
Yeah. Usually it's not difficult to find the technology guy, and in my organization it was the director of information technology. It could be the CTO, but it's somebody who enjoys the bits, the bytes, that kind of stuff. And I had good CMIOs. And I had a number of nurses who worked in IT that were all very comfortable supporting me because I supported them, and I viewed my role as the CIO as I'm going to interpret what the business needs to the technical people, and then I'm going to try to be a buffer between the people who really, really enjoy the fields, the disk drives, that kind of stuff, and try to translate that back into how it can improve the business. Because I think the CIO role at the executive, it's the only person that can do that.
Very good. Very good. You talked about relationships with physician leaders being key. Was this easier or more difficult for you coming from the CIO position? And any advice on how to get off on the right foot with doctors? And we know they're quirky, but is there any kind of best practice in building relationships with physicians?
Yeah, so I had good relationships, but also challenging relationships that hurt and helped me as my transition into the president chair. I would go back to rounding. As a CIO, you've got to round it. Go up to surgery and round. Stop in the anesthesia office. Go to the doctor's lounge. Have lunch in the doctor's lounge. It's even without an agenda, being present so they see you, and naturally conversations will start after a period of time, those conversations and that groundwork pays off dividends when now they have to, if you do move to a COO or a president role, now they understand who you are, that you're not going to approach everything with a technology bent, and that you got a good head on your shoulders and they can trust you. I mean, you have to realize that as a CIO or president or a COO of a hospital, you can screw their lives in a big way with one decision. And so they need to be very comfortable that you're not going to do that. And the only way you can do that is through a relationship and a mutual understanding. And so as silly as it sounds, God, we hear all the time, round, you need to round more. I can't say it enough, and I screwed that up as a CIO, even though I quote-unquote rounded. Never enough. Never enough.
Was that partly because of sort of your introverted, as you mentioned, you're more of an introvert, like to lunch at your desk. I would imagine many folks are the same way. So is that why you shied away from rounding more than you would have? And the other question is, the follow-up question, that is, does it get easier after you force yourself to be out there and I hate to say it, but it's a little bit like politician mode, shaking hands, you know, hearing stories, kissing babies.
Yep.
And I don't mean it in an especially negative way. I think it's just a fact. There's a little politician element to being a high-level executive. But does it get easier?
Great two questions. To your first question, it's hard for me to look back now at the CIO role and try to understand why I didn't round more. One thing that pops to mind is, frankly, I didn't know what I was going to say. So you get up on a unit, you're getting surgery, and you walk up there, what the hell am I going to say? Who am I going to talk to? What are they going to ask? Am I going to look like an idiot? And so, I think, looking back, partly it's that. As I transitioned into the president's chair, I made that an absolute priority, that I have to be out, not only to introduce myself, but if I'm going to have any support and get anything done, I gotta get out, because A, I didn't understand everything I needed to, and so I needed to make sure that I saw it with my eyes. So I still had those trepidations of, okay, what the hell am I going to talk about? I go up on the floor and I hit, hey, Nurse Betty, how are things going? And it gets, I would say, after the third time of going to a unit, it gets a lot easier. And you get in a routine, whatever your routine is, don't use my routine, but you get into this routine of, hey, things going okay? Do you need anything? And then listening, it goes back to one of the slides, as a CIO or as a leader in the organization, you have to be a master listener. So I'll go up on the floors and ask, hey, how are things going? And you can perceive very quickly when things are going well or things aren't going well. And when somebody, now people will stop me and say, hey, Pat over there didn't get lunch today because he was tied up with a patient that was really having a problem. I'll go down and buy lunch for Pat. Right? It's the little things, and it's listening, and it's connecting with people. Round, even though it's awkward, round.
And what I was thinking when you're saying that is, okay, so you don't want to wind up being the technology guy in a meeting. And I totally understand that makes sense. When you round, does it make sense to bring a few folks with you who can take care of technology, nitty-gritty technology issues? For example, I guarantee you that if the CIO is rounding and somebody says, oh, this is a chief information, somebody's going to say, hey, my battery on my cow keeps dying. And that's exactly what you don't want to be. So how do you round? I think it's about bringing folks to help you deal with that, because it's going to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's a balance, Anthony, on you don't want to look like you have an entourage, because if you ended up if you bring your posse up, I think what they're going to ask next is, well, what the hell does he do? Right. And so there's no perfect formula. Every now, like yesterday when I rounded, and I try to do it informally, but every now and again I'll put it on the calendar, and I do it 3 or 4 times a week. Yesterday, the director of recruiting in our HR division knew that I was passionate about rounding, so he reached out and he's like, hey, can I round with you? Yeah, come on over. So he followed me around, and inevitably, you're absolutely right, when I introduced him, he would say, hey, how's recruiting in your area, Manager Jeff? And they would start that dialogue, and it was very helpful. But I think even as the CIO, it's okay as a senior level executive of the organization to walk up there and just ask people, hey, how's it going? And when they say, the battery sucks, make them write it down. Don't fix it for them. Don't enter the ticket for them. Write it down, and my goodness, follow up on it.
Right. Okay, so I get the whole posse thing. That's true. That might not create the impression where you have your handler kind of keeping the person at bay, holding you off a few feet. Don't get too close to Steve. No, I'm just joking.
That's right.
Next question. After you're making your big move, do you think you'd do it all again, or do you have some regrets?
Oh.
Maybe around the time commitment issue you touched on.
That's a great, boy, that's a good question. I don't know that I have any regrets. I'm trying to think. Would I do it again? Yes. Would I put more thought into it on the implications? Yes. It was a hell of an opportunity, and still is. It was a weird, this doesn't happen a lot where the CEO of the system comes to you and says, hey, listen, we need to make this internal movement for a while. We really think you can run the hospital. Would you do it? And he was looking literally for a yes or no because we needed to do it in 2 weeks. Now, looking at it, any future move that I have, I am going to say I'm going to need a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And so and would I do it again? Yeah, I probably would.
And is it a significant increase in time commitment?
It's different time commitment.
Yeah.
So physicians like to meet really early in the morning. And I would say that time commitment is more strategically focused, where you're in a group of many people and people are looking for specific answers from you. If I wrote down, if I kept a timesheet as a CIO and the president, I'm probably spending as much time, or maybe a little less, as president, but it's different. You got to bring a completely different game, I think, in this chair when you're in after-hour commitments.
Mm-hmm. And the recruiter confusion thing, is that something that also is a price that you have to make sure you're willing to pay when you get this kind of an offer?
Yes.
Yeah. That's not insignificant, right?
It's not. I mean, frankly, I'm still in an interim role, so Beacon could come to me at whatever time and say, hey, you're going to go back to the CIO, and then I need to make a choice. Am I going to do that willingly? Am I going to look elsewhere? And there are unintended consequences of taking, there's both upside and downside of taking an interim role as president for a year outside of the IT role. I think it's if I wanted to go back and focus on being a CIO, either at Beacon Health System, previous job that I did, I have an incredibly vast picture of what that means differently now that I've been president for a year. If I want to go be president, boy, there's all sorts of questions a recruiter would ask me, right? Are you qualified? You only did it for a year. What are you really doing? There's just a lot of questions, and so that demands consideration.
Well, very good. I think we're going to wrap it there. I appreciate the presentation and answering all the questions. So as I mentioned, you'll receive an email when our archive recording is ready. For those of you who hold the CHIME CHCIO certification, if you've asked us to report your attendance, we will. If not, let CHIME know you attended. Attending our events gets you 1 CEU for each event. Questions, comments, please go ahead and email me, and you can go to our site to see our upcoming schedule and last 12 months of archived events. So again, I want to thank Steve Huffman, and hopefully he'll join us again for a future event, no matter what position he's in. And thanks again, Steve, and thanks to our attendees. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Yep, thanks a lot.